Have you ever witnessed someone being publicly shamed for a mistake? Maybe it was a celebrity, a friend, or even someone in your community. One moment their life is quiet, the next it's a storm of harsh words, headlines, posts, and comments that seem to come from every direction. Everyone suddenly has an opinion. Everyone becomes a judge. And often the question no one asks is, what if that was me? We live in a world that reacts fast, that points fingers quickly, that throws words like stones, sharp, cold, and merciless. We celebrate exposing flaws, forgetting that beneath every failure is a real human being. But thousands of years ago, in a dusty courtyard in Jerusalem, something happened that still echoes today. A woman caught in her worst moment was dragged into public view, not to be helped, but to be humiliated. She wasn't just guilty in the eyes of others, she was the scandal. Then Jesus stepped into the scene. He didn't shout, he didn't argue. He simply knelt down, wrote something in the dirt, and turned the crowd's judgment back toward themselves. His words were few, but they were thunderous. Let the one who is without sin cast the first stone. No stone was thrown. What Jesus did that day wasn't just about saving one woman. It was about showing us all a better way, a way of mercy, of grace, of seeing past sin and into the soul. He reminded everyone in that crowd, and all of us who read this story today, that we are not defined by our worst mistakes. And more importantly, that no one has the right to destroy someone else's chance at redemption. This story isn't just a moment in history, it's a mirror. And as we dive into it, we're not just going to look at what happened, we're going to ask what it means for us, right here, right now. Because whether you're the one holding the stone or the one standing alone in shame, there's something in this story for you. Section 1, the woman in the crowd. She didn't know how they found her. Maybe someone had been watching. Maybe someone had been waiting for the right moment to expose her. But what mattered now wasn't how she got there. It was the fact that she was caught in the act. No more lies, no more hiding, no more hope of escaping the consequences. They dragged her through the streets. No one tried to stop them. Some watched silently from the sides. Others followed closely, eager to witness the judgment. She didn't speak. What could she say? What defense could she offer when the sin was so obvious? And then they brought her to him, Jesus. He was teaching in the temple, surrounded by people who had come to hear about love, about truth, about the kingdom of God. But now their eyes shifted from the teacher to the accused. The crowd tightened. The accuser stepped forward. This wasn't just about her. They were using her as a trap. They wanted to test him, to corner him, to see what this so-called Messiah would do with someone who had clearly broken the law. Moses commanded us to stone such women, they said. Now what do you say? She could feel their eyes on her. Not just the eyes of the men holding stones, but the eyes of strangers. Some were angry, others curious, a few maybe even pitying her. But none of them were on her side. And yet, he didn't look at her the way they did. He didn't answer right away. He bent down and wrote something in the dust. The silence stretched longer than anyone expected. The accusers repeated their question. He stood up, looked directly at them, and said one sentence. Let the one among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. No shouting, no lectures, just truth, piercing and undeniable. Then he knelt again and wrote more. One by one, starting with the oldest, they left. No more bravado, no more judgment, just silence and the sound of retreating footsteps. Until it was just the two of them. Section 2, what she saw in his eyes. She was still there, standing, or maybe crouching, holding back tears, holding her breath. She wasn't sure if she was safe yet. Maybe it was a trick. Maybe he was just waiting until the last person left before the punishment began. But he didn't condemn her. He looked at her, truly looked at her, not as a label, not as a mistake, but as a person. Where are they? He asked. Has no one condemned you? She swallowed hard. No one, sir. And then came the words she never expected to hear. Neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin. He didn't erase her past. He didn't pretend nothing had happened. But he didn't define her by it. In a world where people saw her only as a sinner, he saw her as someone worth saving. Imagine what that must have felt like. To go from being a target of hatred to being seen with compassion. To go from being moments away from death to being given a future. He didn't just stop the stones, he broke the cycle of shame. This was mercy, pure, undeserved, yet freely given. She didn't have to earn it. She just had to receive it and walk in a new direction. And maybe as she walked away from that place, she didn't fully understand everything that had happened. But she knew one thing: she had encountered something the law could never offer. Grace. Section 3. The heart of Jesus. Justice meets mercy. When Jesus spoke those few words to the crowd, "Let the one without sin cast the first stone," he wasn't just protecting a woman. He was unveiling the heart of God. He was showing us something deeper than law, something more powerful than punishment. He was revealing a justice that doesn't crush, but redeems. The law said she was guilty, and she was. There was no question about that. But Jesus didn't come to condemn. He came to restore. He didn't excuse her actions. He didn't say what she did was okay. But he also didn't let her be destroyed by those who were just as guilty in different ways. That's what made his mercy so radical. It was perfectly balanced. It wasn't weak. It wasn't blind. It was strong enough to face sin and gentle enough to lift the sinner. In that moment, Jesus shifted the question. It was no longer, what does she deserve? It became, who among you is without sin? And just like that, the playing field leveled. The proud were humbled. The angry were silenced. The stones fell to the ground, not because they lost their sharpness, but because the hands that held them realized they too needed grace. Mercy is not ignoring justice. Mercy is what happens when love steps into the courtroom and says, I see the brokenness, I see the sin, but I'm not here to destroy, I'm here to heal. Jesus could have shamed her, lectured her, used her as a public example, but he didn't. That's not who he is. He doesn't delight in exposing weakness. He delights in covering it, healing it, and giving it a chance to become strength. The woman didn't walk away that day proud. She walked away changed. Section 4. The urge to judge. Our stone-throwing culture. We like to think we've come a long way from that ancient courtyard, but have we really? Today, our stones are digital. They come in the form of comments, screenshots, retweets, and headlines. We don't gather in the temple anymore. We gather online. And when someone falls, the crowd swells. The same energy, the same hunger for justice, the same desire to see someone pay still exists. Maybe stronger than ever. But here's the part we don't say out loud. Judging others makes us feel powerful. It gives us a sense of control, a sense of righteousness. We point to someone else's failure to avoid looking at our own. We throw stones because it's easier than admitting we need forgiveness too. Jesus never said the woman was innocent. He just reminded everyone that they weren't innocent either. And yet, in our world today, we act as though we are. We love to expose, we love to label, we love to cancel, but rarely do we stop and ask, what would Jesus do here? Would he add his voice to the mob, or would he kneel beside the one being attacked? The truth is, every time we hold a stone, whether it's a word, a judgment, or a thought, we're standing in that same courtyard, and we're faced with the same challenge. Will we drop it, or will we throw it and walk away from grace? We can't have it both ways. We can't cry out for mercy and refuse to give it. We can't claim to follow Jesus and still lead the mob. Sooner or later, we have to choose judgment or love, pride or humility, stones or mercy. Section 5. The power of forgiveness and second chances. There's something sacred about being forgiven. Not because it erases the past, but because it redefines what the past means. Forgiveness doesn't pretend the wound never happened. It looks at the wound, sees it fully, and chooses love anyway. That's what Jesus did. When he said, "Neither do I condemn you," he wasn't ignoring the weight of her sin. He was lifting it. He was saying, you don't have to carry this shame forever. You can start again. And with that, he gave her the most powerful gift anyone can receive, a second chance. The beauty of grace is that it meets people where they are, but it never leaves them there. Jesus didn't say, go and continue as you were. He said, go and sin no more. That one sentence held both mercy and direction. He gave her freedom and then showed her how to walk in it. Imagine how that moment must have changed her. She had been moments away from death. She had been treated as less than human. But then someone looked at her and saw not what she had done, but who she could become. That's the heart of the gospel. Jesus didn't come to gather perfect people. He came for the broken, the shamed, the outcast. He came for the people who think they've gone too far or fallen too hard or failed too many times. And every time someone meets him in truth, the outcome is the same. They leave transformed. That's the miracle of forgiveness. It doesn't just clean the record. It gives life back. It restores identity. It heals. And most of all, it invites the forgiven to become a source of grace for others. Section 6. If it happened today. Now picture the story not in Jerusalem, but in your own neighborhood. Or better yet, online. A woman is exposed. Screenshots spread. Her name trends for the wrong reasons. People comment things they would never say in person. The internet becomes a courtroom, and everyone holds a stone in the form of a like, a share, a meme. No one asks what led her to that moment. No one sees the pain behind the mistake. They just see a headline, a target, a chance to feel superior. But what if someone stepped into that feed, someone unexpected, and said, "Let the one without sin comment first"? Would the outrage pause? Would the noise fall silent? Would anyone dare to drop their stone? That's what Jesus would do. He wouldn't join the pile on. He wouldn't share the post or laugh at the comments. He would look deeper. He would find the woman behind the story, and he would say the same thing he said 2,000 years ago. "I don't condemn you. Go and sin no more." And maybe today, the woman wouldn't be dragged through the streets, but she'd feel just as humiliated. Maybe she wouldn't expect kindness, because kindness is rare in the age of judgment. But imagine how her life would change if she met someone who offered grace instead of scorn. That's the power of this story. It's not locked in the past. It's alive today, happening in classrooms, offices, families, group chats, and comment sections. And in each of those places, we have the choice. Will we be part of the crowd, or will we be like Christ? Because the world doesn't need more judgment. It needs more people who know how to love like Jesus did, quietly, bravely, and without condition. Conclusion. The light that breaks the stones. At the heart of this story isn't just a woman or a crowd or even a law. At the heart is a choice, one that Jesus made in front of everyone, and one that he keeps offering to each of us. He chose mercy over condemnation. He chose to restore rather than ruin. He didn't ignore the truth of her sin, but he refused to let it be the final word over her life. In doing so, he didn't just rescue her from death, he invited her into life. What makes this moment unforgettable is how human it is. We've all stood somewhere in this story. Maybe we've been the woman, ashamed, afraid, and desperate for forgiveness. Maybe we've been in the crowd, quick to criticize, slow to understand. Maybe we've held the stone. Maybe we've felt the weight of one. And yet Jesus meets us all the same way, with compassion that confronts, with truth that heals, with love that refuses to give up. He doesn't speak loudly, but his words echo through generations. He doesn't draw lines to exclude. He bends down to erase the ones others have drawn. He doesn't just stop injustice. He transforms hearts. There is something beautifully uncomfortable about this story. It reminds us that we are not as righteous as we think. It humbles us. It silences our pride. But it also lifts us. Because even when we are guilty, even when we're exposed, Jesus says, "You are not beyond grace. You are not beyond hope." This world may still throw stones, but the gospel tells us we can be the ones who lay them down. So maybe it starts with us. The next time we see someone fail, someone fall, someone break, we can remember the dirt on the ground where Jesus knelt. We can remember the silence that followed his words. And we can remember the woman walking away, not condemned, but set free. Because the same mercy that saved her is still saving us. And the same Jesus who knelt for her still kneels beside you. Let that be the story we live. Let that be the story we tell. Let that be the story that changes everything.